So it's really shaped my perspective, and I've kind of seen what it looks like at the top end, like really well funded, really sophisticated organizations like Medtronic, and then kind of the whole cascade kind of down the market through everything I've described. So I think it gives me a unique perspective. Number one, seeing what, I don't want to say what right looks like, but what big looks like at a company like a Medtronic or Zimmer Biomet. And then kind of going down the hill, if you will, of companies that may be less well funded or less well developed. But I think what it's given for me personally as a leader is a really robust, eclectic tool bag, I like to call it, of tools, both operational tools, relational tools, and then as a moving into governance, really understanding what it's like to be an operator, both in sales, marketing, operations, communications, and then being able to zoom out effectively as a board member and provide good guidance and connections as a fiduciary or advisory board member. And I think the other part of that is, having been a CEO in a few companies, is kind of understanding what that wearing that hat looks like. And then candidly at HDO Health, wearing a lot of hats as the business co-founder or founder. As I mentioned, I've got a doctor, we have a law enforcement officer, and then our fourth co-founder is actually a PhD professor at Ohio State. So it's a little bit of like Gilligan's Island, but I think what it gives me is just good perspective. I might not always have all the answers, but I have a pretty good idea of where to go to find an answer. Or I know someone in my network from one of the companies I've worked at previously that probably has a good idea of where to find the answer or a resource that could help me in my company, or in a lot of cases help other entrepreneurs or people in my network. So
I think it's really important to have that bench, right? I mean, once you have sort of, whether it's a tool bag, like you said, you've seen what good looks like. So now, more or less building that is one thing.
yeah.
I also think, as well, we also see some of the struggles that larger companies have, as well. And I used to, constantly say with some of the companies that I worked for, that it was a bit like, having, the vision of an albatross taking off, right? So you have a really large bird, needs a really long runway, and if they don't have it, they're just not going to make it. They're not going to clear the trees or whatever it is in front of them.
Sure.
And with big companies, that's typically the way it is. The nice thing with smaller companies is they can pivot quickly and sort of, react to more market, dynamics and things like that. But I also feel like that also has some downside as well, because, if you pivot too much, or you spend too much time on the wrong thing, it's also taking away from your opportunity as well. So, there's this mix of things that all of us have to sort of learn, and having, again, friends and family and a network to kind of draw from, hopefully they can sort of help guide as well.
For sure. And I think for me as a startup CEO, one of the things I invested a lot of time and attention in is building an advisory board. And ours is probably a little bit larger than most. We have, I think, 18 active advisors, but that was sort of by design for me as a first time founding CEO, wanting to have subject matter experts. So we're very fortunate we have members that represent combat medicine in virtually all branches of the military. So Army, Navy, Air Force, and the Marine Corps, civilian law enforcement, fire, EMS, and then a good mix of folks from medical devices in both M&A, sales, marketing, technology transfer. We have an advisory board member that's also in the regulatory community. And then even sort of things outside of the realm of, our specific industry, human capital, 3PL, logistics. So anyway, I think I like to say I put my money where my mouth is, and not having all those people just be people that I know, but leveraging our extended network to bring a really good group of advisors to the table that are kind of aligned with our mission and vision and support where we want to go, not only with our first device, but as we add more products to our portfolio down the road. I think that's important.
Also important. I would imagine, though, too, your military background has to also influence your leadership style. How does it influence that and your decision-making process in the business world?
Yeah, it definitely has left, I'd say, imprint on my DNA as a leader. My time I spent in the Marine Corps, I guess all the things you would assume someone would learn in the military, particularly as an infantry officer in the Marine Corps. So a lot of things around um, principle focused leadership. The mission is really, really important, but also taking care of your team is important. I think that has shown up in virtually every leadership role that I've held since the military. I think the other thing is, that results matter. So my personal tagline is leadership, character, and results. Like, I think if you have strong leadership and you are able to demonstrate that in what you do on a day-to-day basis, you intertwine that with strong character, meaning, you're going to do what you say you're going to do and you have integrity, generally leads to good results. So I think all of those things were really foundational for my time in the military that I've really brought into every leadership role, including what I do both as an entrepreneur, as an executive coach as well. It really underpins everything. So.
Absolutely. Well, I definitely is something that would be good to be able to leverage, especially in chaotic situations, I would imagine as well. And then,
Absolutely.
given some of the individuals that you have, directly interacting with the company, being in the police force and interacting with SWAT teams and things like that, I would imagine the same sort of understanding of what it would be like to be in some of these situations is absolutely critical, for your product and for the patients that hopefully you'll get to care for as well.
Yeah, I think it does give a certain level of credibility. Certainly not claiming to be an expert, particularly not in combat medicine, but I think I understand the mindset, particularly of the end user. In the case of the military, even beyond people that might have a healthcare MOS or job description. So think like the average grunt, if you will. Like, how would he or she react to this device? Would they want to carry it? Would they use it? I think that's been the most encouraging thing for me as the CEO of HDO Health is the incredible user feedback we've received. Not only the quantity of feedback, a couple of hundred end users have had their hands on our device, but really more the fact that, as you might imagine, people that are in the military or even law enforcement, generally not people that would be shy about giving you critical product feedback. If you know what I mean, if they think your product is no good, they're probably going to tell you, this is junk, I would never use this, or I wouldn't carry this in my kit. We're fortunate, and then pretty much universally, we've had good feedback from anyone who's had their hands on our device, really asking like, hey, yeah, this is good. I would put this in my bag or my kit or my truck or vehicle or whatever. Where do I get one? Or, how do I order one? That's what's really carried me through the difficult days when, you're struggling to raise funding or you don't win a pitch competition or what have you. Knowing that we have great user feedback, I feel like we have excellent product market fit is what continues to drive me beyond the big picture of, ultimately for me and my co-founders, it's, we're producing something that's, Lord willing, going to save someone's life. So even just the life legacy as an entrepreneur or leader, say, hey, I was a small part in bringing some technology to the world, essentially, that ultimately saved someone's life in a really critical moment when they were gravely wounded or injured is another motivating factor for me.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
As the founding president of the Alabama chapter of the Private Directors Association, what do you see as the most critical governance challenges facing private companies today?
Yeah, that could be a whole separate podcast, I think. But generally speaking, very similar issues to facing executive teams. Certainly, broad brush risk, whether that's related to cybersecurity, whether that's related to supply chain, whether that's related to capital access, I think are all key issues. And then I think more recently, I think it's changing a bit, but the role of DE&I or ESG sort of in board speak, I think, how a board is tackling that or ignoring that, depending on the board. And then I also think another key issue is just board composition, particularly through privately held companies or even family owned businesses who may not currently have a fiduciary board. Like, really understanding the data that supports the value of having independent fiduciary board members, I think is pretty compelling. And then when you go to recruit a board member, certainly you want to leverage your network, but not having your fiduciary board just be friends and family of the CEO or the founder, but truly independent board members that are bringing a level of professionalism and understanding of what is the role of a board member,